Hello my friend, welcome in Light Code channel and welcome in new tutorial. In this tutorial we talk about component. As you know, in the previous lesson we talked about some topics. In the previous lessons or previous episode we talked about here about routing and middleware and CRS protection and controllers and HTTP requests and response and the views, and now in the blade templates. And into blade template we talk about displaying data blade directives, and today we talk about component. In this episode you can see here we are familiar with what is the blade component. In fact, what are the type of the blade components and how to create blade components. Blade components are a subset of a blade template that allow you to create a new custom reusable and concatenated PHP and HTML. For example, you may want to create a navbar to be used in many of let me close this. Many of your application page. So you build your navbar as a component and can reuse the component wherever you want. Okay, and then we discuss these topics. What are the type of blade components? We are three type of component or blade component. Default blade component, inline blade component, and anonymous blade component. In this tutorial we discuss those three type of blade component and how to create them. Let me go to the VS Code and starting the work. Open the VS Code. I created the new Laravel project. MPT Laravel project is clean. For creating any default component, we need go to the terminal and execute this snipe of code. Let me show you that. Our terminal is starting is starting to work. For creating default component, we must execute in this snip of a code. Let me show that. PHP artisan make and colon and component and name the component. For example, I say button component, button component, TON, and hit enter. You can see the VS Code create for us a new component. But where is the about component? The default component have two parts of snippet code, have a class and have a view page. Let me show you that. In the app here, an HTTP, I think, and a view, this component and the folder component create the class, named it button. Let me show you that. This class component, named it button, and here this function render, which by this function we can view, display the second page of component, additional page of component in the other HTML page. Let me show you this button, this HTML page or blade page. The second page here in the resources and view. Show you that views, and in the views component this folder, and into this folder VS Code created this blade HTML page for us. This is MPT div. Okay, you're familiar with how we can create default component. Let me create the additional, the second type of component. We name it inline component. How to create this? I use this snippet of code, executed this code here, PHP artisan and make and semicolon and write component and add the name for this component, for example, alert. And here, for creating inline component, we should use this helper dash dash inline line and hit enter. You can see here the VS Code created for us inline component, but where is the inline component? I go back to this page, and in the app and the view and the component, you can see here this alert component. But what's the difference between the alert component and button component? As you know, in the default component, the class component and the HTML page component are separated into folders. But in the inline component, the two pages are stored in the same page. Let me show you that. As you know, this is a class component here, alert class component, and in this class the HTML page attached to this class. Let me by the render, and here blade, and you can see this div here attached here. In the default component, this div written or created in the separate page in the view. Let me show you that in this here. But in the inline component, this div attached here. This difference between default component and inline component. The third type of component we can discuss here, this anonymous component. The anonymous component does not have any class. This is a simple view blade page. Let me show you that. By creating anonymous component, just we go to the views in the resources page views, and here we created a new simple HTML page. I think is you know before by this page. Let me show you that. For example, I say card and dot blade and dot php. This anonymous component, as you know, just let me add a simple thing here. I say div and my VS Code is have error. Let me show you that. Div and this div here. Here, as you know, we can create three types of blade component. We create default blade component. The default blade component have a class and HTML page, and the inline blade component, which the HTML page attached to the class in the app view component, and the anonymous component is the separate page which we created in the resources views and created this here. I think this enough for this episode. In the next episode, we discuss and talk about how we can render or how we can display this component which we created here in the another page HTML, like in the main page HTML. Thank you for watching, and I wish I can see you in next lesson and next episode. Bye bye.